We have our special guest, Greg McWhirter. Greg is Greg is a law enforcement professional. He has over 15 years of experience in law enforcement. He used to be a sheriff's deputy in Indianapolis. Now he currently works in Montana in law enforcement, but he also has been a trainer for about 10 years inside his 15-year law enforcement career. And in the last 3 years, he's worked as the Director of Training for Western Montana Tactical. And Greg is going to be coming on. He's going to be talking more specifically about what he does with Western Montana Tactical. And he's going to be talking about what we can do to stop school shootings and other kind of active shooter scenarios. And so, Greg, how are you doing? We got you. You are now live on with us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rick.
Fantastic. Thanks for being on. So, Greg, tell us a little bit about Western Montana Tactical and what it is that you do there.
So, Western Montana Tactical is a company where we provide training mostly in the civilian sector, but also in the government sector, where we provide a huge variety of training, everything from medical to firearms. We also provide security assessments for private individuals and businesses. So we have a huge plethora of services that we provide.
Got it. And so how did you end up working for Western Montana Tactical? Did you join the company or did you help put it together? How did you end up working there?
A little bit of both. I helped found the company, which was also founded by a veteran here in Montana, Dennis Kelvey, and we saw a huge need for some kind of advanced medical training, some firearms training, and the security assessments here in the Northwest. And so we found a company and have been growing regularly the last 3 years.
Great. And what's a typical client for you guys?
Oh, wow. Our client base is very, very diverse, anywhere from the rancher out here in Montana who has a ranch crew and wants to have some medical training for them, all the way to some of your more higher end private clients who may own some ranches and want their security staff to get some additional training, down to the guy who has bought his first gun and wants to get some training on it. We also do provide training for government agencies like local and state law enforcement, and we have done some training with military.
Got it. And so before the show, you and I talked, and we talked specifically. I want to address what your thoughts were about the media when it comes to these school shootings, these workplace shootings, like the one we saw in Virginia Beach. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, frequently you'll be asked as a law enforcement trainer, what can we do as a society to stem and help put a stop to these shootings that we hear about. And one of the biggest things that we can do as a nation, as a society, is to stop naming the shooters. Simply stop naming them. And this isn't some recommendation from me, some guy in Montana. This is recommendation from both of two ongoing studies that are studying active shooter events independently of each other. They both came to the same conclusion. Their number one recommendation is to stop naming the shooters. You have a study right now that's ongoing by the FBI. They post their findings every year. I believe you guys are going to be attaching a link to their study, and also
Yes.
There's a study by Texas State University that's ongoing, that's that is really gone a lot in depth, and there's also some profile work that's being done with both the studies. But as you can see, when the Strasbourg shooting in France, that we had the Christmas shooting here 7 months ago, the European media didn't name the shooter. They knew who he was. Law enforcement knew who he was. They were actively looking for him and arresting some of his cohorts, if you want to call them that, some of his accomplices, and the media just, they didn't name him. They refused to name him, whether it's some kind of terrorist kind of motive, or here in the United States we have kind of the active shooter motive that we see. One of the number one things that we can do is stop naming these people and stop focusing so much on their lives, because many times, like you'll see in some of these shootings, you have these guys who feel small and they want their lives, they want their shooting to bring meaning to their lives, and they carry it out in the hopes of doing that. So the number one thing we can do as a society, especially here in the United States, is hold our media accountable to stop naming these people, stop making them famous.
Do you think, in the relationship between law enforcement and media, is there also something that law enforcement can do?
Here in Montana, you'll find a couple of sheriffs, like the local sheriff here in my county, that are providing free training to some of the schools, where the schools operate on very thin budgets, especially in rural areas. And so you'll have law enforcement who will take their officers who are certified to teach these things, go into the schools, do some active shooter training where they're training in advanced medical. They will train the staff in advanced medical. They will train in how to harden the school, per se, with making it harder for the shooters to get around inside of the school, making it harder for the shooters to find their victims, buying time so law enforcement could get there and do what we're supposed to do, and that is to stop the killing.
Got it. Now, what do you think about the situation with the officer that's now being charged for not having engaged the shooter?
We are talking about Scott Peterson in Florida.
Yes.
If that's correct. So, my personal opinion,
yeah,
is that it's very good that he was charged. Listen, there's school resource officers all across the country, and school resource officers it's not an old program. It's been going on for around 40 or 50 years. Your number one job is to protect the students, period. And there we can have these discussions about, well, the Supreme Court found that police aren't police don't have to protect people. That's not their job. No, we're not talking about the law. We can talk about the case law established by the Supreme Court, but we're talking about the morality of it. And the morality is, you have a gun, you have training, someone's trying to hurt someone's children, go do something about it. And this man failed to do so, and he betrayed the trust of that community. He betrayed the trust of those kids. And this, as a law enforcement officer, I would go and say even further, a school resource officer is not a retirement job, okay? You are there with one primary goal, and that is, should the day come and that there's a shooter inside your facility, your job is to protect those kids, period. If you look as a SRO job, as a retirement job, you might as well retire. You're in the wrong business.
Is that really how it's looked at? Is kind of a cushy spot?
I would say in some places it could be, but in this situation in Florida, I could only speculate what the officer thought because I don't know him, but it certainly seems that way.
I got it. And so you mentioned the schools doing training, and you talked about medical training. Could you go a little deeper into some of the details about that training?
So most of your businesses, most of your schools, they'll have their staff, somebody come out from the Red Cross, teach a one-day basic first aid class. Something that you will find in just a regular first aid kit: bandages, some wraps, some ointments for burns, maybe some disinfectant, things like that. Your basic $30 Walmart first aid kit, and to give them training on that. That's not enough. And so what businesses and schools really need to focus on is some more of that advanced training. What is known in the military and law enforcement as TCCC, which is a form of advanced medical response, or you will have what's called Stop the Bleed, which is a course taught specifically by another company that they designed that course based upon tactical casualty care and evacuation courses like TCCC. So we're talking about dealing with trauma that people will have, gunshot wounds, severe burns, crushing injuries, things like that that you could see in the workplace. But it applies to this active shooter topic that we're talking about: the use of tourniquets, the use of chest seals, the use of how to find some of these wounds when someone's covered in blood, the rake technique where you use your hands going across the body to try to find the wound because there's so much blood. These are things that are taught in advanced medical, like Stop the Bleed, where businesses can actually do something to help improve people's survival. Because unfortunately, law enforcement, when we get there, our number one job is to stop the killing. So we might have to go past someone who has a sucking chest wound, who has been eviscerated by a rifle round, and we have a job to do to move past that. So what can the businesses do? Give themselves the training to keep that person alive until EMS can get there on the scene, until law enforcement can clear the scene, which, as we saw in Florida, could be quite some time. And there we have the medical staff on scene in there after law enforcement has done their job.
So you're saying that law enforcement gets there, they have to clear the threat. And so it's important that the people that are on site are able to treat someone kind of regardless of how severe the injury is.
Correct. And in a lot of the scenarios that you'll see now, in active shooter scenarios that go on in the civilian arena, you'll see some of these scenarios where someone will be shot, and you're teaching now the other people in the room how to take care of that person, because maybe they've successfully barricaded. Now they have to treat that wound. So that's part of the training that we're giving civilians in the active shooter arena, is this advanced medical training, how they can do come up with improvised tourniquets, how they teaching them how to pack wounds, teaching them how to come up with improvised chest seals, things of that nature, so they can improve that chance that person is going to survive that wound.
Got it. Fantastic. And what advice do you have? You know, if someone finds himself in a situation like that, God forbid, what are a couple actions they should be taking?
Well, hopefully your company has approached a company like mine, or maybe their local sheriff, and has gotten some training. You can go, if you have a company that's supportive of firearms rights, and you can carry a firearm, you get some training on how to use it, get some medical training on how to respond to that and carry. The reason I endorse that fully as a trainer and also as a law enforcement officer is just by looking at the data from the studies. Out of the 27 active shooter incidents last year, 20 of them only ended when the person was confronted, either by law enforcement or by their intended victims. So we have these incidents, they're ending upon confrontation. And while I would say, if you have the appropriate training to confront a shooter, it might be a time for you to do so. But if you don't, the run, hide, fight model that we see that's free and available online might be something you want to look into.
Okay, so the run, hide, fight is a training paradigm?
Yeah, and everybody can go on to the FEMA website, look at their videos, and it's kind of a small course, but it's something that's a workplace thing. And it's designed based off of these studies, because when you look at the most recent year, 2018, from the FBI study, out of the 27 active shooting incidents, 60% of them were at the workplace. And we see this hand in hand thing, this hand in hand concept that active shooters are happening more at the workplace. We hear about the school shootings more, and they're a big thing, and they're horrible, they're tragic. But then we have these, out of the 27 shootings last year, only 5 of them were at schools. Only 5. The rest were a mix of businesses and open space, open arenas. So where we really need to train for this is in the business, and that's where we have companies like mine that could come in there, work with your company, figure out. We could do a security assessment, we could do a medical assessment, and start figuring out what your needs are, and to be able to train your staff in appropriate manner so that you can give them a chance to survive.
Got it. And so you said that confronting them is likely, just judging from the statistics, that's the way it's going to end, is with a confrontation. That's
from the statistics. Like I said, 20 of the 27 only ended when they were confronted.
20 of the 27. Okay.
20 of the 27 ended when they were confronted, and that's a pretty big number. And we there's a paradigm that's shifting right now in the training world where confrontation equals survival, and we're starting to see a lot of trainers starting to teach courses that are more aggressive, that teach the staff or teach the teachers or teach the hospital workers to go after the shooter. And that paradigm hasn't caught on yet, but I think it's coming, because the statistics, the studies are showing us that when you stop the shooter from shooting people, it's typically over after that. And we have, last year, out of those 27, 5 of those 27 were stopped by citizens, just regular people intervening because they didn't want to be a victim.
Got it. All right. Well, we are all out of time, Greg, but you've given us some fantastic information, and really a lot of future conversations to have. You mentioned these new paradigms and this kind of shift in how we should think in terms of the media, in terms of how we actually engage the perpetrators in these situations. So thank you so much for being on, and we look forward to seeing you again and talking with you again.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thank you, Greg. All right, everyone. That was Greg McWhirter.